Hello, everyone. Welcome to Free Thought Blog's Podish-Sortacast, the podcast which tries hard to be on time, but it's working on it. It's working on it. My name's H.J. Hornbeck. I am the blogger at Reprobate Spreadsheet. With me, I've got PZ Myers and Sarah. PZ, actually, you might as well introduce yourself now, and then we'll get Sarah to go.
But it's PZ Myers. Who are you talking about? Anyway, yes. And I'm the blogger at Feringula. So that's what I do. And I'm wearing the funny hat because that's what professors always wear on their day off. No, actually, I just came running out of our commencement ceremony. I got here just minutes ago from seeing off the 2023 class of undergraduates at the University of Minnesota Morris. So we're done with them. They can go away now.
Flee, flee. All right, Sarah, your turn.
Hello, I'm Sarah and I blog as Dr. Sarah at the Geeky Humanist blog over on Free Thought Blogs, and I haven't been to any commencement ceremonies. I've just eaten dinner, so much less exciting.
Indeed,
Yeah, I'm
we're
hungry.
all
This is a pretty exciting thing to hear about.
my
It was
goodness.
meatballs and spaghetti, if that makes any
Oh, that
difference
sounds
to anything.
great. Yeah, I haven't eaten all day,
It's
so
really good. Yeah,
Nice.
sorry, if you're on like anywhere near each other instead of being on different continents, I would offer you some of our leftovers, but it wouldn't be very practical.
Yeah,
yeah, it's a long flight.
Yeah.
not going to survive shipping very well, but I hope you at least ate it well in moderation. Yeah. Yeah.
I did. Great segue. Yes.
Indeed, indeed, because that's precisely what we're going to be talking about today. Moderation. It's one of those things which always pops up on the internet. People always have strong opinions on it, and being strong opinion havers, we figured we might as well contribute to that too. All right, first off, what the heck is moderation? I'm going to open it up to either Pizza or Sarah. Take your pick. Whoever goes first.
Hmm. It's basically making and implementing decisions about uh, how people should behave on a public forum or a shared forum.
I'll be harsher. It's censorship.
Indeed.
It's canceling people on the internet, as we all know.
The horror.
Yeah.
Oh god. Yeah. Oh, we should get into that later. But I would also
I'd still
extend.
prefer my definition.
I would
Yes,
also
yours is a little more gentle and a little bit more tolerable
exactly.
to the trolls, actually, but okay.
Well, I would extend a bit further to say it's also about what is being discussed as well too. Certainly like there are places where you can talk about any sort of topic, but there are also sort of guided areas where you can sort of discuss things as well too. And unsurprisingly, we all have a bunch of, we've all been online for years at this point, so we've all got various opinions on it. One thing I think we could all agree on, though, moderation is necessary, right? This is not optional.
Yes,
Well,
I actually posted about this on my blog and got some comments. And here's an appropriate comment from Cubist is their name. And they say, in the absence of active moderation, any online forum will degenerate into a troll-infested wasteland. The only variable is how long it will take for the last non-troll to give up or be driven out.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's weird. I mean, you would think about it, that's kind of not what you would expect. I mean, in practice, I don't think that if I go into some spot, the place is going to sort of devolve quite rapidly and break. It's sort of not our norm here. So, why exactly is it so necessary?
I will just remind, was it you who told me that the slime pit went defunct back in October?
Indeed, it was.
So there's a great example. These were people who were dedicated to nothing but trolling and slagging off on various people, especially people like everyone on Free Thought blogs, uh, Rebecca Watson, Stephanie Zvan, just anybody who dared to speak out in favor of things like feminism and equality and racial injustice, they didn't want to hear it, so they went on crusades to try and shut everyone up. That was their goal. We outlasted them, though. So
By a decent amount too. I think we're at least 6 months, maybe almost a year at this point. And I mean, still no sign of
Still going
slowing down.
strong.
yeah.
Plus, we have a podcast.
Oh, right.
Mhm.
But
A
one of the
Podish-Sortacast.
tools we used to shut them down was moderation. That people from that group who we knew were dedicated trolls, when they showed up on our blogs, they got shut down really, really fast. All they had to do was mention where they were coming from, and I was there to block and ban them. So, um, I don't think that was sufficient to destroy the slime pit, but it removed one of their primary motivations, which was to get attention on various other blogs. And I think that happened all across the board. That Rebecca Watson was very good at cutting these people off. Stephanie Zan was very good at cutting them off, and they end up. The last vestige I know of the slime pit is Jerry Coyne's blog. So
Indeed. Which is a good reminder too that content, it's moderation is not just as simple as banning nasty words either. Coin it places very strict moderation things on his blog itself, but he has a high tolerance for certain types of people, and certain people have found ways to sort of express their views in ways which do not necessarily trip his moderation, filters. So.
right, and since you mentioned it, I also got to say that Jerry Coyne's blog has good content. He's got a lot of interesting stuff on there, at least when he's not talking about Israel or feminism or the grievance studies people or anything like that. So he's got a lot of good stuff there, and it's just kind of unfortunate that you dig into his contents and they're running wild with the the refugees from the slime pit. I would say the same thing of Hemant Mehta's blog. He's got almost no moderation in place for the comments, which makes them a kind of unpleasant place for many people to visit. And again, he's got good content. It's really annoying because he's putting up stuff that I would like to read, but I have been so burned by the horror of his comment section that I won't go anywhere near it.
And that does sort of affect the page itself. The comments are an integral part of the blog or article or whatever it is. If the comments are toxic, people are also going to avoid the blog or thing in general. Don't read the comments is good advice in many cases, but I mean it still sort of colors your opinion of the place.
Mm-hmm.
Right, well, I think we're getting a little bit off track here because we are sort of coming from different spots on this as well too for what we consider good and bad moderation. So maybe just sort of a quick round of how exactly we sort of came to these places. Our sort of various views on moderation, specifically with how our internet pasts have sort of come to that. I don't know. I guess I could go first if you want, since I'm probably
Sure.
the youngest on here. I mean, cut my teeth at Frangula for a long time. Been a long time blogger and all that, and sort of I got sort of by osmosis sort of got some moderation ideas from PZ himself. I of course later on became a blogger a couple of years ago underneath Reprobate Spreadsheet, and having sort of been online for a long time, I sort of have a very strong moderation policy, we should say. I mean, comparable in some senses to Jerry Coyne, but different in very different strategic ways too, which maybe I should get into later on. I'm also a moderator for our Mastodon instance freethought.online, and I'm a little bit looser over there in terms of moderation and all that, but still semi-draconian, I guess I would argue. And in between that as well too, I also help moderate our Discord server, where I'm actually far more lax in that regard. So I guess Sarah, you're probably next most experienced on that, I'm guessing. So
Hmm. I spent my early online years on one of the abortion debate news groups, and fairly quickly decided my niche in life was to be the one who is sort of very, very polite to everyone in if needed, a very cutting way. So that's kind of the tone I aim for. And in terms of moderation, I just basically tell everyone they're supposed to stay polite, and mostly they do. And occasionally I've had to delete comments. I think it does help that uh, um, I'm not one of the more well-known blogs, and of the free thought blog ones, I'm not one of the super popular or the super prolific ones, and I think that does affect the level of commentary I get. And because I get fewer comments and fewer commenters, I get fewer trolls.
all right, PZ, let's hear your sort of moderation outline, essentially.
Oh, okay. Well, since we're doing our histories there, I got my start online on Usenet on Talk Origins back in the 1990s. And that's where I quickly learned what that quote I said earlier was, that if you ignore moderation, it turns into a wasteland in short order. Um, Talk Origins is an interesting group because it was also really rich in content. So it was lots of information there, but were also these persistent trolls, these creationists who would charge in and start spouting nonsense. And they're still there. They keep going because as a subset of Usenet, there's very little that anyone can do. There aren't people who are assigned the job of cleaning up the trash in a Usenet group. So it quickly gets overwhelmed there. And it's just purely the persistence of the people who are informed and want to get good information out there and who are feeding on the life juices of trolls who keep it going. So I came out of that experience with a commitment to the idea that if I were in charge of a comment section, I would have pretty strict policies there's a lot of tolerance for different points of view, but you can recognize pretty quickly the people who are just coming in to spew garbage and bury everyone else in the trash. And you've got to kill them really fast. Kill metaphorically, not literally. Just get rid of their comments and block them and prevent them from proliferating further. So that's kind of where I come from. Is I learned quickly that no, you can't tolerate these kinds of people in your discussions. But at the same time, I'm also greatly in favor of a variety of opinions, which creates an interesting tension. So, yeah, you can come into my blog and say whatever you want, except once you cross the line into harassment and trolling and just going on and on. So I'll quote another comment from my blog from somebody. This is Hemidactylus, who said, "From what I have seen, PZ's moderation seems to be clearing up blatant anti-trans messes, also racist messes and things like that, and other abusive fuckwits, but is okay with people criticizing him or engaging in seriously heated debate back and forth amongst themselves. He is far more, dare I say, laissez-faire than a certain IDW snowflake who hates being called a blogger." Just saying. So yeah, that's where the line is drawn. You can come into my blog and you can say whatever you want about me, and people do. Oh, so uncomfortable. But anyway, yeah, you can come in and say that kind of stuff. You can disagree with me vigorously, but once you get, for example, one thing that happened several years ago is every time we had a thread that was about uh, the evils of female circumcision, there were always these people who would charge in and they'd say, "What about male circumcision?" And everyone agrees with them. No, that's a terrible thing. We should not be circumcising anyone, male or female. But they tried to drown out any discussion of the circumcision policies of certain countries that were doing horrible things to women. And honestly, I think male circumcision is far less damaging than what's done in many forms of female circumcision. So yeah, then I would have to step in and say, shut up and go away. We're having a discussion about something different. And your concerns are fine. Every time I'd say, yeah, I agree. We should not have male circumcision. But this is not the place to go on and on about it. So that's kind of where I come from, is mainly what I'm concerned about is keeping the conversation going. And if somebody comes along and dominates it, especially if they dominate it with abusive misinformation, then I'll shut them down.
Yeah, I've actually got very similar philosophies as well too. Oh, sorry, you were going to say something, sir?
Oh no, I was just going to say the same thing, that's pretty much where I'm coming from as well. And my rule is you can disagree all you like, but do it politely.
Right. Yes. And also to use the magic word here, to do it in moderation. That, people should come in and they should say their piece. And if they want to argue, that's fine, but they have to be willing to listen to the other side and engage with the arguments and not just repeat over and over and over again. Another example is here on YouTube, on my channel, there is somebody who's started posting the same comment over and over again about using my name. They're under my name, PZ Myers, on Telegram. I do not have a Telegram account, but they're saying you should come to here, come to something or other and talk obviously about me. And no, I just kill those as soon as I see them. There's probably a few still there that I have to get around to cleaning up later. But yeah, that kind of persistent repetition, that's the hallmark of a troll. And no, I don't tolerate that either.
Yeah, I tend to sort of I've actually I've got my own sort of moderation thing, which I might as well bring up later on. But I I come at it again, being influenced by computer science and all that. I sort of come at it from a little bit of an information theory kind of thing. The idea is essentially, if you're going to write a comment, the goal here is to sort of maximize information. I'm going to read a little bit from here. It takes time and energy to read a comment, so you should try to convey as much as possible, clearly as possible, in the least space. Critiques speak opinions. If evidence wins over assertion, obviously there's gray areas and all that too, but it works. And of course, the context is important as well too. Like I've noticed, whenever you talk about something related to transgender people, for instance, PZ, there are a brigade of people who try to jump on and spread transphobic bullshit and all that. It's just it comes with the territory itself, and it's not really relevant to the topic at hand. You can sort of come on various things, which actually really are not intended to be sort of a debate or argument, just sort of various news items. And people will come on trying to debate whether or not transgender people exist. And that's off topic, and that's not appropriate.
And wrong,
Conversely,
because they do exist.
well, yeah, that's just trivially obvious. And there's ways to sort of combat that. You can have things. Currently, you've got your endless. I think it's the infinite thread right now. Is it not?
I think that's, yeah.
But it's sort of some variant of the endless thread where there is no set topic, and you can discuss whatever you want within there. And this does allow people to sort of engage in sort of debate and discussion beyond that without having to worry about whether or not it's relevant or not. You're still trying not to waste people's time. If somebody keeps spamming the same content over and over, there's no point to that. We got the point the first time around. Thank you very much. And this can lead to various sort of different approaches or sort of styles to moderation itself. how you moderate a blog comment section is very different from how you'd moderate a Mastodon instance, for instance, just because the inherent technologies are different.
Let me disagree with one thing you said, though, because you said that your primary goal is to encourage information, that high information content in a comment is valued. And I kind of agree with that, but I feel like one of the primary purposes of commenting on a blog is engagement. That what you want is for a discussion, a conversation to occur. That you state a position, you state an opinion, you say, here's something I disagree with, and then you encourage a back and forth. That's what you need to have a good, healthy comment section. All too often, information can be a glut. If somebody comes in and does an info dump of paragraphs and paragraphs of, even factual, good information, it stops things cold. Where do you go from here? It's much better to break it up into small pieces and say, okay, here's this little detail that I'm interested in. Here's a fact that I'm wrestling with. This is what I think is the case, and then get people to throw in their feedback. That makes for a good, healthy comment. But sometimes too much information is just deadly, just stops everything.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. And that's the thing is we're talking about human communication, all that, and there is 5 billion shades of gray within here easily. So it's every rule has exceptions. It's tricky at the best of times. Let's be straight up with that.
Okay, let me ask you guys a question, because here's another issue that rather than having to deal with the trolls, we just squash trolls, right? We just get rid of them. We don't want anything to do with them. But one other common problem that crops up is the ad hoc sort of weird stuff that people start talking about that's a distraction, that's off the topic. So you mentioned my infinite thread, and that's what that is for. Is I created just a thread that's always there, that's always available, that people, if they've got some random brain fart, put it there, and maybe people will start talking about it instead of constantly trying to derail other threads where there might be a relevant conversation going on. So what do you guys do to deal with the people who come in with weird random stuff that they just want to talk about and throw out there?
I've not really found that to be a particular problem. And I think the threads in which has come nearest to being a problem are the ones in which I get into the did Jesus actually exist as a real person, or was he completely mythical thread? So that's pretty low stakes as such things go. I don't really care too much if people ramble on. And I've got one very regular commenter on these threads who has this huge habit of posting long lists of people who say this and out of such and such and out of context quotes, and it's kind of technically on topic for the general overall subject, but can be very, very random as to whether it has anything to do with the particular bit I was discussing in that post. And honestly, mainly I just leave them to get on with it and don't bother too much about it. And occasionally speak up if I think things are getting too far off things, saying, well, actually, if you recall, we were talking about such and such, and I don't think this particular tangent is really contributing. And but on the whole, I've not found this to be a huge problem. I mean, I don't know. I don't get that much debate in my comment threads overall. So if someone wants to go on and hold another debate about something different, then whatever, they're probably not interrupting anything. I think the one time it happened was when someone was getting into a religious debate, which I was enjoying, but it was in a thread that was about something completely different, and other commenters are getting fed up with it. And I said, look, I'm going to set up a specific thread that's entirely for people who want to come along and convert me. And I did, and lo and behold, the person never showed up again. So that didn't really get anywhere, but I suppose you could say that that was dealt with, although not in the way I'd have liked, because I would have loved to go on having the religious debate in a thread meant for that purpose.
Aha.
Oh man, and
What about you, Adrian?
this is actually kind of central to my entire sort of moderation scheme. In fact, people actually tend to think that I do not have a comment section on my blog. In reality, I do. It's just sort of hidden away, sort of tucked away in sort of a black closet somewhere and all that. And the reason why, essentially, is it's sort of a dynamic I've actually observed within comment sections in general. Uh, Typically speaking, when you're looking at sort of like the trolls and the bad actors and all that, their goal is to sort of like hijack the comment section itself. There's actually a really good Thought Slam video on this recently, where pointing out that a lot of bigots actually don't even really sort of want to engage honestly with the conversation instead. They want to drag you over to their own talking points, where basically their underlying assumptions are sort of taken into place. You know, like there's a common thing involving transphobes in sports, for instance, where they all automatically assume that, okay, well, transgender women have an intrinsic advantage in sport, or, men have an advantage in sport. It's like, okay, well, first off, you haven't even established that, but even if you did establish that and all that, there's sort of like 5 chains of logic to sort of get to where they're trying to argue from right now. And if you're trying to argue where they're at right now, you're sort of implicitly accepting all the other sort of chains which sort of led you up there to begin with and all that. Oftentimes, again, this is this thing to sort of distract and sort of go beyond from that. And when I was setting up my blog, I was very much sort of okay. I see you doing this. I see how you're doing this. How could I potentially short circuit it? And in my case, the plan was to actually set up one endless thread. All comments on my blog have to go to this endless thread. This means then that you're not able to actually perch, when I write something pointing out that, hey, all your evidence that transgender women are violent, complete bullshit. Here's a nice argument from the Secret Service, which says, no, it's actually trans men who are violent, if anything. Transgender people tend to actually behave as their chosen sex rather than what they're assigned at birth. So rather than sort of jump in underneath and all that, you instead have to go through to this other community page where you can actually go and talk about those sorts of things. And it's acceptable. And what that really does is sort of changes the incentive structure. Now you can't really sort of drag the discussion to where you want it to go. You can sort of do it on this sort of off to the side kind of thing, where people can actually go and have these debates and discussions and talks and all that. But you're not able to actually, throw your bigotry underneath the blog post itself. And this prevents people from sort of going back and sort of bragging about that. This is something I saw all the time with the slime pit themselves, where they would actually be, they would actually love being moderated and all that because it fed into their sort of martyr complex. It's a lot tougher to do that when you're dealing with a system like this. And unfortunately, the net result of that is just like nobody actually comments over on my blog, and nobody really sort of knows where the comment section is because it's not set up anywhere else, anyplace else like what other blogs have. So it's effective, but perhaps a little bit too effective in that regard.
Yeah, that seems kind of extreme. Let's just kill all the comments, all of them, and then we won't have this problem.
They're not killed. They're just
Perfectly
hermetically
valid.
sealed in a box, well away from.
But I
Okay.
mean, that is a perfectly good solution
Sure.
for. It's not the one I've chosen, but it's one that some people choose. Don't suppose anyone here reads a Captain Awkward blog?
I'm afraid not.
Oh,
Okay, Joe, absolutely brilliant. Strongly recommend. It's basically an advice blog and used to have brilliant comment threads. I mean, you can still see these in the archives where not only would Captain Awkward give this really incisive and beautifully written and wonderfully readable and tremendously helpful solution to a problem, but you then have 100 or so people in the comment section chiming in with helpful thoughts as well, and it was wonderful. But that was coming at the cost of a massive amount of time and emotional energy on Jennifer Peepass, I think her name is, the person who runs it. Anyway, it was she was her job of moderation was very, very difficult, and in the end she just decided to shut down all comment threads. And there is a Captain Awkward forum, which is not run by Captain Awkward, it's run by fans of the blog, and people who want to discuss things on the threads can go and comment over there, but you don't get to comment on the blog itself.
Oh, yeah. So I just looked it up. Okay. So April 27th is the most recent one by Jennifer P. And yeah, they don't have comments. Okay.
Told you.
That's a perfectly reasonable strategy. I agree.
And this is what worked for her.
Yeah. I think that ought to be the bottom line, is that whatever works for you is what you ought to do. And if you think you ought to just open up and let any troll spew in there, that's a reasonable strategy too. I mean, that's basically what Hemant Mehta's blog is all about, at least the last time I looked at it. And I'm not going to go over there and tell him, no, you got to clamp down. Instead, I'll just say, no, I'm not interested in that, so I won't show up. But yeah, the other extreme is HJ or Captain Awkward. Just shunt all those comments off somewhere else and worry about them later.
Yeah, and I do want to shout out, I didn't come up with this myself. It was actually, I think, first used by Miri amongst the atheoskeptic community.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they blogged over at, I think, the Orbit. Although they used to be on Free Thought Blogs, ejected over to the Orbit.
Yes.
But yes. But yes, they're the ones who started it, and I sort of thought through sort of the implications of it. It was very much like, oh yeah, this makes a ton of sense. Let's try it, and all that. And so I have.
Whatever fits your style. That's what you
Exactly.
have to do.
In fact,
Yeah.
if we can take a quick detour, I do want to acknowledge the comments within the live chat as well too. It's I think someone from Jane667. They talk about trying to get rid of comments which are deceiving people. I think you mentioned earlier on someone claimed to be PZ from Telegram, and all that, and that is something which obviously needs to go in terms of moderation.
Right.
Impersonation is just bad. But yeah, they're also sort of agreeing with us as well that different formats suit different styles as well too. What Twitter needs is quite different than what, say, a blog sort of needs as well too. And blogs generally need to be much more focused, whereas Twitter is sort of like a perpetual, endless thread and all that.
Right.
Although, here's something I do find interesting: nested comments. What does the group think of them?
I tried them, but it was all a bit of a mess, and I believe that's the case for you too, PZ. I mean, it's a shame because I love being able to have all these little sub-threads going, but it just got very, very confusing trying to keep up with it all. And I found it in the end a lot easier just to, if you're replying to someone else's comment, just to name them and give the comment number.
Yeah, and sometimes you just want to get into this blog entry and find out what are people saying now, what's new. And the way it is now, without nesting, you just go right to the end of the blog post, and there they are, all in chronological order. And I found that nesting them just, like you say, it made a mess. It was really hard to track. Maybe it's better for following an individual hierarchical collection of comments, but that utility usually did not weigh out very well because people just went flitting about and coming up with other topics they talk about, and then your nesting would just fall apart and you wouldn't be able to follow it at all.
Oh yeah, no, I hate nested comments with a fiery passion, and a lot of that is also just UI issues. There might be sort of a UI design which allows you to sort of follow on and get new comments and all that. I have never seen it. Every existing implementation I've seen is just straight up terrible from Slack all on down. So it was one of the first things I did when I got control of my blog is get rid of nested comments. No, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Another thing I ran into is, I've got a limit how long a block of comments can get. I think it's currently 500 comments, and then it starts a new page. And if you've got nested comments, that just goes kerblooey. It just
Hmm.
doesn't work at all. Suddenly your nest is on a completely different page and disconnected from everything. So yeah, that just did not work for me.
Right, but I have never been anywhere near the number of comments that would be needed for this to be an issue. So, yeah, that's not
You
a
have
problem over
complete
here.
control. You could go in and you could say, oh, my comment page length is 10 comments,
Mm.
and you would see how disastrous it would be.
Yeah, but I'll pass, thanks.
Yeah,
I'm happy with how I've got things.
right. Yeah, it was an experiment I tried early on, and oh no, this is not going to work. So to ask, I want to go back to something Sarah said. So you mentioned about, you had people who were kind of obsessive, and they'd come in and they'd have their own thing that they would start writing at length about, which uh
It's just one person, really. He's a pretty
yeah,
regular commenter. A strange chap. I don't know why he's so focused on this one thing. Sorry, what's the question?
yeah. Oh, so I was just going to mention that I see the same thing on my blog, and there's actually a couple of people who are doing this kind of thing, and I don't know what to do about it. So, for instance, I'll name a name. This is not an invitation to harass them, and I'm not saying that they're a bad person or anything. But there's this commenter named Gerard of Titan Server who
Hmm.
comes in every once in a while, and he's got his little boogeyman that he's got to expunge. And it's usually technical subjects. I first noticed him when he would come in on threads about nuclear power, and he has opinions about nuclear power and nuclear engineering, and he would write these long posts about them. And I can tell that some of the commenters are kind of exasperated with him. He's not very responsive to discussion, and he sometimes gets a little sensitive, and then everybody starts getting a little cranky about him. Uh, but he's not breaking any rules. He's not doing anything really wrong. He's expressing his strongly held opinions at length. So what do we do about that?
Hmm.
Oh goodness.
Hmm,
Hard to say without seeing the specifics. By the way, I've had the same chap on my blog
oh,
again in the
yeah.
Did Jesus Exist threads, and I've not found it a particular problem. He just makes his arguments, and I make mine refuting them. I think the closest I got to that was when we got into an argument about the population crisis in one of my threads. And one person was pretty much just shooting down everything that people were saying and saying, this is hopeless, this is not going to work. And he was just being a total negative Neddy. And in the end, I said, look, I think we're basically agreeing that this is a big problem and that something really needs to be done about it, and that possibly it is going to be too big a problem. But there's a difference between saying the situation's desperate and saying it's hopeless, and you just seem to be shooting everyone's solutions down. And honestly, I do not think I'm the only person getting fed up with this. And he backed down and apologized. And I think sometimes, I wouldn't have banned him at the level things were, and he was someone who was contributing to debates generally at that time. But I found that just naming this and saying why I found it as a problem was, in this case, enough. So, from what I've seen of Jared of Titan Server, which is not in the same context as the discussions you've had, I think he's also someone for whom that might well work.
Yeah, again, I am he's not in danger of getting banned, okay?
Hmm.
He can be obnoxious, and he infuriates some of the other commenters, but as long as you're sticking to the rules, the sort of common sense rules of, not being abusive, and as long as you're not totally repetitive, I feel like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything about that. We're just going to have to we're just going to have to live with somebody with an obsession,
Mm.
which is all I can do.
Mm.
Yeah.
This actually sort of highlights, I think, one of the key things most people miss about moderation itself. Oftentimes, we sort of focus on, well, okay, no bigotry, no sexism, blah blah blah, that sort of thing. For the most part, there are people who disagree, of course, but for the most part, everybody's sort of on the same page about that. If there's any disagreements over what constitutes sexism, racism, etc., and all that. The key thing, really, that most people miss about moderation is it's not just about preventing bigotry. It's actually about providing a good community. It's creating sort of norms and standards within the community itself for how to talk about and express things with other people. And I mean, this is actually kind of fascinating because it all really sort of depends on the venue as well. Like on my blog, never been a problem with that. Again, like a handful of people even know I have a comment section on my blog, so obviously the small numbers really sort of contribute to that. Also hasn't been much of an issue on the Mastodon instance as well too. I do have, I think, a hundred followers or so. I do actually get, it's a fairly common thing for my toots or posts to actually get likes and comments and all that. I've never really sort of had anybody sort of pursuing me on that regard, and that just might just be because of how I've sort of set up the Mastodon instance itself and who is allowed on that. Discord is sort of an interesting thing. I actually tend to be the lightest when it comes to moderating on that, since I sort of view it as a sort of a group project, and almost everybody is less, sort of focused on community building and blah 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 than me. And there have been individuals on there who have basically sort of managed to derail and almost poison the entire environment, not by breaking any sort of rules and all that, but the way they actually promote community discussion. And I'm not going to share any sort of names in that regard on that, but it is a tricky moderation thing. And had I sort of viewed the Discord as more of, my place, my baby and all that, I probably actually would have banned them long ago. But what usually actually sort of happens in here is there's these series of kerfuffles, things sort of escalate and all that, and then either someone bans them or they self-ban themselves and get out of there. I had one person who was very disgruntled with how we're actually treating this person, one of these people who is being sort of disruptive and all that, and self-ejected from the server, saying, "You people don't give a shit about moderation. I'm out of here," and all that. I'll take your crazy ideas elsewhere. And it really pained me because I kind of agreed with them. I kind of wanted to be more strict about banning these people, but I also couldn't because of, the place that was there. And one way we actually have sort of coped with it on the Discord server is setting up various other channels. So, for instance, we've got something called Insanity Defense. What it is basically if you have, deep, dark thoughts and all that, you can post them there. And it's going to be very lightly moderated, and you're not going to get people sort of jumping back at you and saying, "Oh, it's not so bad, it's not so bad," and all that. You can actually be a little bit, sort of darker and more mean over there. And conversely, we've also got sort of a good vibes channel where we basically talk about, sort of things that make us happy and all that. It's a great place to turn to if things are sort of getting you down. And other channels are sort of intermediate between that. Some, things can get kind of dark in other channels and all that. And I'll try and gradually steer things away, although usually they sort of self-steer for the most part. And that's sort of the topic I've got. So on Discord, create individual channels to sort of help guide what can be talked about where, and that actually then people can actually make decisions about what they're sort of exposed to, and hopefully that actually sort of helps direct the conversation over there. On Mastodon hasn't been a big enough issue, and I've got because Mastodon sort of inherits a fair bit of what Twitter's got. There are variations such as muting, blocking, reporting, that sort of thing, which helps to sort of help manage the conversation that I'm sort of dealt with. Although being a mod over there, I've kind of got to stick my head into the toilet a fair bit more than I would like. Whereas for my blog, it takes care of itself. It's never been an issue. And I'm
Yeah,
hoping that's by design.
I've been neglectful of Discord. I've got my little channel and I throw stuff in there, but I haven't been doing much with the other channels. And you mentioned a couple of interesting channels, and I just started looking at them. we should plug the Discord more.
We probably should, although that also means more moderation effort as well too, which is annoying.
Yeah, but you're doing it, so I don't have to worry about it.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. It doesn't affect you, so.
Yes, so we should put a link to the Discord somewhere below this one and tell people go there. There's all kinds of cool stuff going there. I mean, like I look into the creepy crawly section because they got photos of interesting organisms there. But otherwise, I've just been staying in my own lane, and I think I've been missing out.
All right, I'll make sure since I have control over what goes on here. I will
Yeah,
post that underneath this thing as well too. There's got to be like an invite link or something like
yeah,
that.
you can create one just pretty easily. So, yeah, are you on the Discord, Sarah?
I used to be, and I mean, I've still got
Yeah,
it, but I haven't actually been on there for I can't even remember how long because life's too short, and I have a stack of
right.
other stuff to either want to do or have to do, and Discord's just so far down the list that it falls off the bottom of it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. It's an interesting thing. It's got a lot of potential, and um, I've just I've just been so buried in teaching this semester. I'm glad
Hmm.
that's over for a while. Of course, now I'm going to be buried in spiders all summer long. But yeah,
It
I'm
sounds
going to be
more
married in
fun though.
moderation tasks.
yeah, yeah. So just let HJ take care of all that complicated moderation stuff on Discord, so that we can just have a good time over there.
That's okay. Because, I mean, if you're going to be plugging that, I'm also going to be plugging our Mastodon server, which is much more of my baby and sort of run more in the way that I sort of think of. So, Free Thought Blogs does have a Mastodon server. Check my blog for details on it. The thing is, though, it's very restricted in who is allowed in. As you can imagine, with Twitter going through a long sort of decaying process and all that, there have been waves of people sort of coming in and all that. And to try and keep things somewhat manageable as a moderation thing, since I mean I'm moderating the Discord, my own blog, and that. I'm very much like, okay, you can come on Free Thought, the Mastodon server, but you have to be a commenter, or you have to essentially be sponsored by a blogger. Those are the main two. It's actually three groups, three classes of people which are allowed on and all that. The details are on my blog. I'll also share a link underneath there for how to sort of come in and join. So we can sort of hash out
Yeah,
those details.
yeah. I've been disgraceful in neglecting the Free Thought Blogs Mastodon server, but it's largely because I got an account. I'm at octodon.social/Freezy Myers, and that's the one I've been trying to build up for a long time. So it feels like adding another Mastodon account would be distracting.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually got two Mastodon accounts, and basically I handle it by posting 95% of my content to one, and occasionally
Yeah,
firing off, retweets or something, reboosts or something to another. The other one, unfortunately, is very, very neglected. I am hoping to sort of set up a couple of bots to actually sort of help manage some of my tasks. Because obviously, if I want a blog post, it'd be great to sort of have that sent out. But I want to sort of keep everything separate such that you can actually sort of control what you're dealing with when you're actually following things. So, it's my personal thing underneath my own personal Mastodon account, but there's a separate account for the blog, a separate account for, video game streaming or whatever, that sort of thing.
right. I'm thinking that's one of the weaknesses of Mastodon is a lot of people complain that it's hard to get on to get an account set up and all this, and that's one thing. But then also, I would love to be able to just automatically say, okay, here's this account on Free Thought Blogs Online, and here's this account on Octodon Social. They're the same account. Could you please just link everything and just connect them all up?
That actually should
And
be quite possible, honestly.
it should be, it sounds like something that's feasible and pretty easy to do. Although not knowing the guts of Mastodon, I don't know. But yeah, being able to do that would, and do it simply, so I don't have to type in a whole bunch of code to make it work. Um,
Guys, I feel that we have either ironically or appropriately, I'm not sure which, gotten into a brilliant example of one of those very tangential off-topic conversations that we were just saying were difficult to make decisions about in moderation situations. So, do we want to discuss what we do about this very tangential off-topic conversation, whether we should moderate it and get back to the topic at hand? Very
I
meta.
I think we have a volunteer moderator here who's got things under control. So yeah, you tell me. I'm perfectly willing to. Although we are running up to that
Yes,
hour
there
mark.
is that. It's 11 p.m. here, so
Yeah.
if we maybe switch back to the topic for closing comments, I guess.
Okay. That sounds like a good plan.
Works quite well.
Go ahead.
Me? Okay. Well, I'm chatting, so. And I mean, I will pull a little bit more of, host privilege and all that. I did actually have a couple of things that I wanted to bring up, which, now would be a good time to bring up as well. As you can imagine, from Mastodon, there are a lot of opinions on how things are actually moderated. A good insight I can think of actually comes from Hachyderm. Is it hachyderm.com? I forget which, but they're a well-known Mastodon instance. They're quite large and all that, and they have thought through quite a bit about moderation, how it's done at scale, and they actually have this one particular post from the specific one. I've actually got a series of minutes on how here, but this one's specific to May, where they actually sort of go through and I think go in very helpful detail on what's the sort of nuts and bolts of moderation actually looks like behind the scenes. Definitely highly recommended in that regard. In addition, as well, just recently a cute little mobile game popped up called Moderator Mayhem. I've actually shared this behind the scenes and all that. And the goal here is to actually present you with a series of challenges of moderation, of how content actually is moderated. You're sort of presented with a mythical website which allows you to review anything. They've got their own sort of, code of conduct and all that. And you're supposed to go through and actually moderate things appropriately. It's a really good exercise for sort of testing how well you handle those shades of gray and how well you're sort of interpreting, things in that, things within that regard and all that. And, if you have, complained about mods in the past, I would definitely recommend it because it sort of shows through the hard side of moderation, of actually deciding what sort of content, we consider as mods. Yeah, other than
Yeah.
that, moderation is hard. It's all about communities. So if you're going to moderate, focus on thinking of how can I make this a better community rather than just, did someone say a bad word?
Mhm. Okay, yeah, and I would follow up and just say, yeah, that sounds good. I would not play this game though because I do moderation in real life over and over and again. It's no longer fun. But okay, yeah, it sounds like a good thing for somebody to get some experience with. But number one, I would agree with you that the goal of moderation is to improve the community, to get people engaging. And that's really the bad thing about trolls is they are there to disrupt community. So that's why we have to work on getting rid of those people. I I would also add that as a moderator, important things to value are you got to be open and transparent about it. You can't just say, okay, I don't like this person, they're going to quietly disappear. Uh, when I ban somebody, I announce it loudly and in bright red text in the comment thread where it's happening, and I say bye, you're gone, and usually why. Sometimes it's obvious why, but yeah, that's a key thing. There is you want people to be able to trust that if they're within the guidelines, if they're being reasonable, they don't have to worry that all of a sudden somebody's going to pull the rug out from under them.
Oh, cool. All right. I suppose with that, we should probably give our goodbyes and stuff. Since
Well,
I don't.
Sarah's got to give her concluding word here.
Oh yeah, yeah. Of course, of
Um,
course.
I think you two have said most of it. So really, the one thing I will add, touching on what HJ was saying, was you're also not going to be able to please all of the people all of the time. I've had someone storm off my blog in a snit because he did not like the fact that I hadn't moderated something that was going on that he thought I should have moderated. Which, having searched my soul on the matter, I felt that I would not have really actually wanted to moderate the thread to do what he wanted to his satisfaction within that thread. And I think that, there are going to be some people unhappy with the way you do it. So having 100% happiness with the way you moderate the thread is not a realistic goal. So, just work on what you guys are saying about creating productive and hopefully enjoyable communities for productive discussion.
All right, let's give social media shout outs then. Let's see. Bring up the appropriate things. Sarah, let's actually no, let's do PZ first.
Social media shout outs. Oh man. Okay, well I've already mentioned freethoughtblogs.com/Pharyngula. Figure it out how to spell it. You ought to know by now.
It's okay. It's on screen for the viewers at home. So.
Oh, good. Okay. And then, I'm on Twitter as PZ Myers. I am on Mastodon at octodon.social as PZ Myers. I'm on Instagram as PZ Myers. I'm consistent, at least, mostly. So yeah, I'm easy to find online.
Alas, I was not quick enough to bring up your Mastodon account and all that. But you just go to the blog and it'll be there.
It's okay. Yeah.
All right, Sarah, let's go to you next.
I'm on Free Thought Blogs as Geeky Humanist, and I do have a Twitter account also as Geeky Humanist, which I have not used in some time because it decided I had to review and sign up to the terms and conditions again before going back on there, and I have not really had the time to do that. And I have not yet got onto Mastodon, and I should do. And I have, although I do have Instagram and Facebook accounts, they're completely separate from my blogging and they're personal. So not advertising them on here. There's nothing interesting on them anyway. And I don't think I'm on anywhere else that I can think of.
All right, well, hit me up after this and we'll set you up with a Mastodon account if you so desire.
I do. It's so far at the bottom of my to-do list.
Indeed. Well,
and I'm on Reddit's The Mummy's Curse.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
yeah,
I've been lurking on Reddit a little bit too. So,
all right. Getting back to me, I am on Free Thought Blogs as Reprobate Spreadsheet. As you can see over here, is a nice little spread of that. I also sort of own and operate our Mastodon instance as well. So again, check the associated blog post if you want to sort of join on that. With that, I think we're pretty much done here. So I guess now that we've said goodbyes, we shall be seeing you next month when we're going to talk about something. We haven't decided yet.
Okay.
Yes. Trust me, it's going to be an awesome topic. You're going to love it. You do not want to miss it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Absolutely, awesome banger topic. It's going to change the world, that's for sure.
Oh boy.
All right, with that, we shall see you all later.